There is a strange silence in a world that never stops speaking. Scroll through the endless tide of face, captions, and filtered smiles, everyone showing, everyone proving, everyone performing. Yet somewhere, in the quiet edges of this digital theater, there are people who refuse to step onto the stage. Their profiles remain faceless. Their cameras stay turned away. They do not post. They do not pose. They do not seek the invisible applause of hearts and likes. And this absence, this deliberate omission, feels almost subversive. Who are they, these ghosts in the algorithm? Are they shy, secretive, self-conscious? Or have they seen through the game entirely? Are they the ones who still remember what it means to be, rather than to appear? In a world where your existence seems to depend on being seen, what kind of person chooses to remain unseen? This is the paradox. The less they show, the more mysterious they become. The less they seek attention, the more our attention drifts toward them. They appear as silhouettes in the crowd, those who reject the constant exhibition of self, those who quietly step out of the current of validation. But why? What drives someone to stand still in a world addicted to movement? Alan Watts once suggested that our obsession with control, over image, over identity, over perception, is what ultimately destroys our sense of presence. He said that trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. Yet that's exactly what social media encourages, an endless act of self-definition. A mirror staring into another mirror, forever seeking a reflection that finally feels real. Perhaps the ones who do not post have realized something about this reflection game. Perhaps they've sensed that every photo shared is another fragment of self lost to the machine, that every caption written is another word distancing them from who they actually are. But what if their silence isn't resistance at all? What if it's fear? Fear of exposure, fear of judgment, fear of being misinterpreted? What if it's not enlightenment that keeps them hidden, but a wound that doesn't wish to be touched? The truth could lie anywhere on this spectrum. For some, privacy is protection. For others, invisibility is power. For still others, absence is simply the last refuge of authenticity in a culture that confuses visibility with value. And yet, isn't that itself another illusion? To take pride in not posting, does that not also become a kind of identity, a digital ghost costume worn to feel superior to those who still play the game? Even silence, in this context, becomes a performance. So who are they really? The ones who refuse to share their faces, their meals, their milestones? Are they free or merely hidden? Are they enlightened or afraid? And more importantly, what does their absence reveal about you? Why do you feel something when you see that empty profile photo, that nameless account, that absence of updates? Why does it stir curiosity or irritation within you? What is it about another's silence that exposes something about your own need to be seen? Maybe the question isn't, why don't they post? But rather, why do you need them to? Because beneath every performance lies a watcher. And perhaps, without realizing it, you've become addicted not just to showing, but to seeing, to validating others, and in doing so, hoping they validate you. In the theater of modern identity, where every soul is both actor and audience, the one who steps off stage challenges the entire play. And so, the stage falls quiet for a moment. You feel the emptiness between the noise. That is where the real question begins. The quiet ones who do not post are not anomalies in the digital landscape. They are mirrors reflecting a deep fracture within modern identity. To understand them, you must first understand the invisible current that moves the rest of us, the relentless hunger to be seen. Since childhood, you were conditioned to equate visibility with worth. "Look at me," says the child, seeking approval. The parent smiles, the teacher praises, the crowd claps, and something begins to form inside you, a fragile equation between being noticed and being valued. Society reinforces it. Success becomes something that happens in public. Happiness becomes something shared. Even love begins to feel incomplete until it's acknowledged. And so, unconsciously, you start to live not for experience itself, but for its reflection. Carl Jung might have called this the tyranny of the persona, the mask we wear to adapt to the world. Social media didn't invent the persona, but it amplified it beyond recognition. The persona was once a thin veil between self and society. Now, it has become a full-blown digital entity, curated, edited, filtered, staged. We no longer just wear the mask, we become it. In this light, the people who do not post their photos are not simply private. They are resisting, consciously or not, the inflation of the persona. They are refusing to feed the mask, but their refusal does not come without a cost. Because to withdraw from visibility is to risk erasure. In a culture where algorithms reward performance and punish silence, invisibility feels like death. Friedrich Nietzsche once warned that he who fights with monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster. In the digital age, the monster is the spectacle itself. And the one who resists it, by not posting, risks being consumed by another form of ego, the pride of invisibility. Alan Watts described this beautifully when he said, "The ego is nothing other than the focus of conscious attention. Whether that attention is loud or silent, expressed or repressed, the ego still feeds on it. Some people post to say, 'Look at me.' Others refuse to post to say, 'I don't need to be looked at.' Yet both are still anchored in the same paradox, the desire to define oneself in relation to others. This is the hidden psychological root. We are caught between two fears, the fear of being unseen and the fear of being seen too much. To be unseen feels like vanishing into nothingness. To be seen feels like losing control of one's soul. Every image you post is a fragment of identity released into the wild, distorted by the eyes that receive it. You can't control what others see, and yet you are bound to their gaze. Sartre called this the look, that moment when another's perception shapes your sense of self. So maybe the ones who don't post have simply withdrawn from the battlefield of the gaze. They've chosen to remain unseen, thinking it grants freedom. But here's the deeper problem. Even withdrawal can be an act of control. Even silence can be a way of saying, "I will not let you define me." And that, too, is a form of definition. We live in an era where image has replaced presence, where the mirror has devoured the face. Schopenhauer might have said that humanity has become trapped in the will to appear, a desperate striving for recognition that can never be fulfilled. The pleasure of being seen is fleeting. The pain of being forgotten is constant. Thus, the cycle continues. Share, refresh, compare, repeat. Yet the ones who don't post break the rhythm. They interrupt the hum of validation. They become anomalies in the collective trance, and for that reason, They unsettle us because they remind us of something we've forgotten, what it feels like to exist without being observed. Still, there's a danger in romanticizing them. To imagine that the non-poster has transcended ego is to miss the deeper truth. Jung warned that what we repress doesn't disappear, it hides in the shadows. The person who refuses exposure might not be enlightened, they might simply be afraid. Afraid of judgment, of rejection, of revealing a self that feels inadequate. Their silence, though serene on the surface, may conceal storms of insecurity. And so we arrive at a haunting realization. Whether one posts or not, both are haunted by the same specter, the need to control how they are perceived. One tries to shape perception through presence, the other through absence. Both are trapped in the same mirror, merely standing on opposite sides. Alan Watts once compared identity to music. You cannot grasp a melody by freezing a single note. In the same way, you cannot define yourself through an image, or through the absence of one. The self is a process, not a product. But we've forgotten the rhythm of being, mistaking snapshots for symphonies. And that is the true psychological root. We no longer live ourselves. We display ourselves. The moment experience arises, the mind already asks, should I share this? And in that instant, authenticity dies a quiet death. But in the emptiness left by that death, something stirs. A question, faint but growing. If you stopped defining yourself by what others could see, who would you be? At first glance, the choice not to post seems harmless, a matter of preference, perhaps even dignity. But beneath that silence lies an entire psychological landscape. The refusal to share is not just a rejection of visibility. It's a reaction to the suffocating atmosphere of constant performance. And yet, even refusal carries weight. Every absence echoes loudly in a world that measures presence in pixels. The unseen consequence of social media is not just addiction, it's fragmentation. The self becomes divided between the one who lives and the one who performs. Over time, the performer begins to devour the person. The you that breathes, feels, and experiences becomes secondary to the you that must be seen doing those things. Every photo is not a memory, it is a transaction. Every post is not expression, it is currency. Now imagine what happens when someone steps outside that economy. The person who doesn't post might think they escaped the system, but the truth is more complicated. Their silence is still interpreted. The algorithm may ignore them, but people do not. Others will project meaning onto their absence. They must be private. They must be hiding something. They must not care. In this way, the non-poster becomes a symbol, a blank screen upon which others paint their assumptions. There is no real escape from the gaze. There is only a shift in its direction. Even silence becomes a language. The cognitive trap here is subtle, but profound. Our brains are wired for feedback loops. Dopamine surges from social validation are not metaphorical. They are chemical. Each like, each comment is a tiny spark of recognition, triggering neural pathways that mimic the sensation of connection. When you withhold your image, you break that loop, but you also deprive yourself of the micro-validation that modern society has taught you to depend on. So the non-poster experiences a different kind of restlessness, a quiet sense of disconnection. Their feed is not a mirror, but a window they look through, unseen. And while the performers dance under the lights, the observer begins to question their place in the theater at all. Nietzsche might call this ressentiment, a subtle bitterness toward the spectacle, born of both rejection and desire. The non-poster may tell themselves they're above it all, yet a part of them still longs to be included. This inner conflict breeds a peculiar form of alienation, the pride of being invisible mixed with the loneliness of being forgotten. Invisibility has a psychological cost. To not be seen for who you are, or to choose not to be seen at all, creates a vacuum. Humans are relational beings. Our identities are woven through interaction. When the web of visibility is cut, something within the psyche begins to drift. Viktor Frankl once wrote that meaning is found in connection, with others, with purpose, with the moment itself. But if you withdraw too far into solitude, the meaning begins to thin. The irony, of course, is that the visible ones suffer too, but in the opposite direction. Their identities become overstimulated, inflated by mirrors, reflecting mirrors. They are not alone, but they are hollow. The invisible ones are not hollow, but they are alone. It's a cruel symmetry. The unseen consequence of both extremes, constant exposure and complete withdrawal, is the same: disconnection from the authentic self. For the ones who post, identity becomes an external projection, maintained, edited, consumed. For the ones who don't, identity becomes an internal echo, guarded, unrealized, undefined. One drowns in attention, the other in introspection. Alan Watts warned of this polarity when he spoke about the illusion of control. Both the performer and the hermit are trying to control life, one through the manipulation of image, the other through the manipulation of absence. But life cannot be controlled. To define yourself, Watts said, is to confine yourself. Whether that definition is loud or silent, both are cages. And yet, this is where the paradox deepens. The person who doesn't post may begin to feel morally superior. Their detachment feels like clarity. They watch others seek validation and think, I've transcended that. But the moment superiority arises, ego has merely changed its costume. The absence of the photo becomes the photo. The silence becomes the statement. The deeper tragedy is that both kinds of people, the visible and the invisible, are chasing the same thing, a sense of realness. They want to feel alive, connected, seen in a way that doesn't distort them. But social media, as both mirror and mask, distorts by design. And so, we arrive at an existential impasse. To post is to lose a part of yourself to the gaze. To not post is to risk losing your place in the human conversation. You cannot win the game by playing it, nor by refusing to play. The true consequence, then, is not visibility or invisibility. It's dependency. Both the poster and the non-poster are still defining themselves in relation to the system. The game controls both, because both believe their choices are free, when, in truth, they are reactions. The real rebellion is not silence, nor exposure. It is freedom from the need for either. But how can one achieve that freedom? How does a person exist authentically in a world built on illusions of identity and control? That question leads us to the next frontier, the rebellion, the shift, the possibility of awakening from both the noise and the silence. There comes a moment when the performance grows unbearable, when even silence feels like another costume, when you realize that every move you make, posting or not posting, is still bound by the invisible expectation to be something in the eyes of others. That's the moment rebellion begins. But this rebellion is not loud. It doesn't scream or announce itself. It starts with a quiet reversal, a turning inward, not to escape, but to see. Alan Watts often spoke about the futility of trying to improve yourself, because the very act of self-improvement reinforces the illusion of a separate self that needs fixing. You are an aperture, he said, through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself. The rebellion, then, is to stop treating your identity as a project and begin to experience it as a process. The one who doesn't post may believe they are protecting their true self from the distortions of public gaze. But what if the true self doesn't need protection? What if it only needs to be recognized as fluid, ever-changing, untethered to any image at all? To break free, you must understand the trap. Social media thrives on duality: validation versus invisibility, exposure versus withdrawal. But both are illusions created by the mind's addiction to self-consciousness. You exist as an ongoing moment, breathing, sensing, feeling. Yet the ego tries to freeze you into something others can label. The moment you try to define yourself, you step out of life and into performance. The rebellion is to dissolve definition. You do not need to become invisible to be real. You do not need to be visible to be alive. You only need to be. This sounds simple, but it's radical, because it undermines everything society teaches you. The world tells you to be seen, to be liked, to leave a mark. But Watts, and many mystics before him, warned that the more you try to leave a mark, the less present you become. The river doesn't try to write its name in the sand. It simply flows. You can begin this rebellion in small, tangible ways. Stop curating. Start noticing. Before reaching for your phone, take one breath and ask yourself, am I trying to share this? Or am I trying to escape something? Before hiding from the world, ask, am I seeking solitude, or am I running from discomfort? These are not moral questions. They are invitations to consciousness. Nietzsche wrote, "Become who you are." But few realize that this isn't about invention. It's about uncovering the you beneath the personas, beneath the opinions, beneath even the self-image of being someone who doesn't care about attention. To break free, you must reclaim your attention, because the economy of the digital world is built on stealing it. Every scroll, every click, every photo, even the absence of one, feeds an ecosystem that thrives on your awareness being elsewhere. Rebellion is not just a philosophical stance. It is the radical act of returning your awareness to yourself. You stop being a consumer of images and start being the witness of experience. That's what true authenticity feels like. It's not the purity of the image you present, but the intimacy of the presence you inhabit. Watts often compared life to dancing. The point of the dance is not to reach the end, it's to dance well. When you move through life as if it were a performance to be evaluated, you stiffen, you lose rhythm. But when you move for the joy of movement, without needing to be seen doing it, you rediscover grace. This is the essence of the rebellion, not to reject the world, but to dance with it without losing your step. When you post, do it with awareness, not attachment. When you remain silent, do it with presence, not pride. When you express yourself, do it not to prove, but to participate. You may still use social media, but no longer as a mirror. It becomes a canvas instead. You share not to define yourself, but to reflect life as it is. And when you choose silence, it no longer hides you. It reveals your freedom from needing to explain. Freedom begins where explanation ends. And here's the secret. Once you stop trying to be authentic, you become it. Because authenticity is not an image. It is the absence of image. It is the raw immediacy of being. To rebel, then, is to live as though you were already enough. Not because you've proven it to the world, but because you've stopped needing the world to confirm it. This rebellion cannot be performed, because performance belongs to the system. It cannot be imitated, because imitation implies comparison. The only sign of rebellion is peace, the quiet certainty that you no longer have anything to prove, to hide, or to achieve in the realm of appearances. The world may still expect your face, your updates, your story, but you'll smile and understand something deeper. Their expectation no longer binds you. You're not missing from the picture. You've simply stepped into the part of frame that no one looks at. The live-in background, the pure awareness behind every post and every silence. This is the beginning of true liberation. But beyond rebellion lies something even deeper. Not just freedom from illusion, but a total transformation of what you believe reality itself to be. The rebellion ends when you realize there was never a war to begin with. At the end of all the questioning, after the noise and silence, the showing and hiding, the rebellion and release, something astonishing happens. You begin to see that the whole struggle was built on a misunderstanding. You were never fighting the world. You were never even fighting your ego. You were fighting a phantom, an illusion of separation that never truly existed. Alan Watts called it the myth of the self. The idea that you are a little creature inside your body, piloting it through a universe of other creatures, each isolated in their private skulls, looking for validation from other islands of consciousness. But that, he said, is not how life actually works. You are not a wave trying to find its place in the ocean. You are the ocean, temporarily appearing as a wave. When you post a photo, you're the ocean expressing itself as a ripple of visibility. When you remain silent, you're the ocean expressing itself as stillness. Neither is more real. Neither is less sacred. The truth is that there was never a self to protect or promote. There was only life, playing, unfolding, moving through form. The tragedy of our age is that we've forgotten we are the play itself, not the actor trying to control it. You thought your refusal to post was a form of rebellion, but it was still a move within the same game. Now, you begin to see there is no game. The screen, the gaze, the validation, none of it can touch what you truly are. Because what you truly are has no boundary, no image, no definition. It is the awareness that watches. It is the silence before every thought, the space between breaths, the stillness underneath your name. All your life, you've been trying to find that sense of realness through visibility, through invisibility, through rebellion, through retreat. But the realness was never missing. It was simply obscured by your attempts to locate it. Like a man searching for his glasses while they sit on his nose. When Watts spoke about this awakening, he said that enlightenment is not about becoming spiritual. It's about seeing that there was never anything non-spiritual to begin with. Everything, even your confusion, even your vanity, even your withdrawal, was part of the cosmic dance. You don't transcend social media by deleting your account. You transcend it by realizing that its illusions only have power when you forget they are illusions. When you remember that life is not a performance, but a process, not a mirror, but a movement, you reclaim your place as the watcher, the consciousness behind the screen. The image was never the prison. Your identification with it was. When that identification dissolves, something miraculous happens. You begin to see others differently too. The people posting photos are no longer narcissists or seekers of attention. They are waves trying to remember the ocean, just like you. Their longing to be seen is not weakness. It's the universe's own desire to witness itself through their eyes. And the ones who remain unseen are not superior. They are the quiet side of the same rhythm, the breath that exhales while the others inhale. It was never about choosing between showing and hiding. The point was to see through both. You begin to understand that life's beauty lies in its impermanence, in the fleeting reflections, the imperfect portrayals, the laughter that disappears into silence. Watts once said that if you want to know what real love feels like, stop holding on. Let things come and go, like waves. So, you let go. You stop clinging to an idea of who you must be, online or offline, visible or invisible. You allow yourself to flow, to post when it feels right, to be silent when silence feels true, to exist without justification. In that letting go, the frantic pulse of modern life softens. The world is no longer a competition of selves, but a dance of appearances, a shimmering play of consciousness, expressing itself through every gesture, every glance, every moment shared or withheld. The great realization is that you were never meant to find yourself in the first place. You were meant to lose yourself so completely that there's no longer a boundary between you and the living world. And when that boundary dissolves, something divine emerges, not in a religious sense, but in a profoundly human one. The sacred is not somewhere else. It's here, in the simple act of being aware that you are. To live without the constant need to define yourself is not emptiness. It's freedom. It's not detachment. It's intimacy with everything. The person who doesn't post and the one who can't stop posting, they're both part of the same cosmic artwork. Both are brushstrokes on the same infinite canvas. The difference is awareness. When you finally see that, the paradox collapses. There is no inside or outside, no performance or privacy. There is only life, playing as you, in this moment. And that realization, quiet, humbling, infinite, is the true liberation Alan Watts spoke of. You stop needing to be seen because you finally see. You stop needing to appear because you finally are. No longer defined by your image or your silence, you walk through the world like a reflection that knows its water. Every post, every breath, every unshared moment becomes a prayer to existence itself. You have nothing to prove, nothing to protect, nothing to hide, because there is no you apart from the whole. And in that final recognition, peace doesn't arrive. It was here all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise.